Hey everyone, it's me, Zan. This is going to be the first time I could do a kind of long form discussion video, so I'm going to try and be quick and to the point. So if you don't know much about Monster Hunter, I will not be spending a lot of time explaining it. So this would be best understood for those who are already experienced with the game. So with that said, let's get to the point. Ever since Title Update 2, they've added a good number of things such as usability improvements, weapons, balance adjustments, and improved game stability. All fine and dandy. From there, they've also added two new monsters such as Laggy and Seregios. They've added layered weapons, and there's the whole Festival of Accord of, how do you say this? Flamefet? Flame Feet? I don't know. Which has, and recently for the past week now, Arc Tempered Utuno was released as with the festival. So hopefully everyone's having fun with the festival. It's very bright, colorful, and fancy, kind of. I wouldn't say fancy. That's the wrong word. Just a lot of festivities and very colorful. So the point of this video, um, now that I've gone over the update, um, I'm going to be talking more about the overall game's design and difficulty, and which direction it should go for it to feel better for not only new players but veteran players. Because I think there was a general consensus with the majority that the game was just simply too easy or boring. I don't know which one you land on, but for me, it just happened to be a bit easy. I do find the game fun, and I'm already almost at like 300 hours, which is not that much compared to some people, but I have been playing it a lot. So, with that, let's get to the weapons. I definitely want to talk about the weapons. I've marked down a bunch of features that, or what I would consider a feature to the weapons. There's the focus strikes, there's counters, perfect guards, power clashes, perfect dodges, offsets, and follow-ups. Um, the perfect guard and power clash are put together because every weapon that can perfect guard can also power clash, and there's no exception to this. Those two come together one and the same. So every weapon was given the focus strike. That's fine and dandy. From there, it goes all over the place. And it is pretty clear to me and probably a lot of other players that the Greatsword was given the most favoritism and feels the strongest out of all of them. The Power Guard, why did I say Power Guard? The Perfect Guard and Power Clash being given to the Greatsword also has an offset and a follow up. This is important because only recently the hammer was given a follow up, and that was very good for the weapon. And some of the other weapons that have offsets don't have follow ups, unfortunately. And the insect glaive, it's kind of in a weird spot. So the biggest reason why I made this graph was just so I can understand how much attention these features were given to each weapon. And to me, the greatsword seems like it was given the most attention, while a weapon such as the light bowgun was entirely ignored. So, with the light bowgun as it is now, it has the focus strike and nothing else, which is shocking to me because, like, why would they do this to it? So, if you just take a minute to look at the graph, you'll just kind of understand how much each weapon has. And in my personal opinion, most weapons should have an offset. You could argue that weapons maybe such as dual blades, the sword and shield, and honestly, the insect glaive probably shouldn't have an offset, but regardless, I don't really know the reasoning behind which weapons have an offset and which ones don't. So, with that said, if a weapon like the insect glaive has it, any weapon should theoretically be can have it. Like regardless of like lore reasons, just even a light weapon such as the insect glaive can do an offset, so any weapon in the roster can also do an offset regardless of lore reasons. So yeah, just take a look. and I'll move on. So, um, wanted to focus a little bit more now on perfect guarding and power clashing because this is very um powerful in its own sense. Perfect guarding is a very powerful tool, and it is only available for those with shields. But another thing that shields can do is that they can power clash. Power clashing is a very cool and I want to say advertised feature of the game when before it launched. And to everyone's surprise, less than half the monsters have this interaction. So I've put here a graph of all the monsters that do have it. And Seregios and Laggy were the two newest monsters added, and I've marked that they do have a power clash. But before them, before recently that they were added, there was only like what, 9 monsters? Let me see. Five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, 9 monsters out of what, 29 when the game launched didn't have a power clash. And so now with these two new ones, there's 11, but there's still 32 monsters in the game. And with half of them, less than half of them with a power clash, this feels very unused. And um, I want to mark in a white circle which monsters should have a power clash. Um, so here I've marked with the white circle at least 10 extra monsters. The ones in red, um, technically, just for animation wise, can have a power clash. Like it won't be that difficult to make an animation for it, but more for the lore reasoning behind them that you can debate that they don't need one because of the way they fight is so different. So such as like spider monsters like Lalabrina and um drawing a blank, the other spider, I forgot. Anyways, Odegiran, he's a very fast and jumpy monster that doesn't really use its weight to attack the hunter. So you can argue that maybe not him. And I've also marked two bird wyverns, which are very floppy in the way they attack and don't necessarily use their weight to charge at you. They kind of just throw their attacks all over the place and kind of hope they hit you. So you can maybe argue that they don't need a power clash. And obviously, the Mitsusune, the first added monster in the game, uh, is a fox. She's a giant fox that has he, it's a boy. Constantly, there is no female version. Um, Mitsusune is a fox that is sly and quick and very slippery because they have bubbles. So you can debate that um, you wouldn't have a power clash with them. But that still leaves 10 other monsters, in my opinion, still need a power clash. So whether the other 6 get one or not, debatable. The other 10 for sure need one and don't have a reason why not to. And now for the rest, the last, what, 5 would be the 2 octopus monsters, such as Nuudra and Zuwu, and 2 Goliath type monsters like Zoshia and Jindahad. Clearly don't need one because they're far too big. I didn't say it, but the 2 octopus ones are just too slippery and their body weight doesn't necessarily work in that way. So there's no reason for them to ever have a power clash. And I've also marked Hirabami, not heavy, not big, but in my opinion, far too small and too light of a monster to have a power clash. Not only that, but it spends 99% of its fighting in the air and very rarely will ever touch the ground. And I don't want there to be an interaction where if you just block it enough times, the animation pulls it down to the ground and you clash with it. And I don't really see a mid-air clash happening either because that doesn't really make sense for a monster as thin and pretty much fragile as a Hirabami because it's kind of built like a snake slash centipede. And not only that, but it's extremely lightweight that although it technically has wings, they're more like flaps that sail through the air currents to traverse its surroundings. So, in my opinion, this monster is far too light to consider a power clash, oddly enough. you know what? If Capcom gives it a power clash anyways, it's a welcome change regardless. Just more monsters clearly need power clashes. Moving on from that, I'm going to start talking about the weapons individually and kind of a general consensus because I've talked to a lot of people about their opinions of each weapon, how they feel, do they feel good, what could change about them, and what feels bad about them and definitely needs changing. So, first off, the Greatsword. The Greatsword feels very good for the most part. To the average player, it's definitely a lot of fun. Maybe to like the pro like speedrunners, they'll get like nitpicky about which attacks are strong, which one's meta, but I don't think the game should be balanced around speedrunners. So aside from that, I do think the Focus Strike could use a couple changes and a couple people agree, such as the Focus Strike has a really large hitbox. So what would happen is you would start striking wounds on, let's say, the left side of the body, but the Focus Strike will sometimes hit right wounds on the right side of the body, and that interaction shouldn't be happening. So that, in some shape, way, or form, should be fixed. And in my personal opinion, while the Greatsword is in focus mode, it should not be able to do 180 spins. It should just be restricted to 90 degrees um, for its swings, in my personal opinion, because it just doesn't make sense for you to be able to spin around constantly while swinging, especially for its two charge slash. Because what happens a lot is someone will swing one direction and then mid swing of the second part turn around 180 and hit the monster for full damage. And for as much realism as Capcom tries to put in their game, this is extremely unrealistic. So, um, I am going to make a point to consider the realism of the game only because Capcom wants realism in their game. So if they want it, they have to kind of commit to it because a lot of people might not know this, but they've even taken the time to animate and put in the game the Doshiguma taking a shit. So, um, as cool as it is that they like realism, they've probably prioritized too much into the realism of the game and not enough on the balancing and optimization of the game. And although that's probably and most likely an unfair comparison, it's it's still true that they put in cheating in the game and didn't optimize the game. So whether it's fair to make that comparison or not, it's kind of Capcom's fault for letting such a thing happen while not optimizing the game. So it's unfortunate. Moving on, the hammer. The hammer's pretty good in my opinion. Um, kind of felt like my voice was cracking, but doesn't matter. Um, The hammer, for the most part, was in a good position, but it was definitely lacking in damage and usability, I suppose. So what they've done is they've recently added offsets and a follow-up to them. And I think that was a huge change for it. And it had some buffs here and there in certain attacks. I don't really know where. I'm not really a number cruncher. Aside from that, some people talked about oils, which is an old item system in previous Monster Hunter iterations, to where you can apply it to a weapon and it'll change some form of function, rather for a buff or simply changing it for a different purpose. And the idea here is to add some sort of oil, and if not an item such as that, or maybe a mod that you can choose before a hunt, to change the damage of the hammer to slashing damage, specifically so that it can achieve tail cuts, severings. Um, However, this won't go without negatives, such as if it's a mod and you choose slashing damage from the get-go, you won't be given KO damage for the duration of the fight because for the sake of balance, it just makes sense. But if it's like an oil, it can temporarily remove like bonus KO damage because you're not really going to be going for the head anyways. It'll be more incentive to be going for the tail specifically to cut it off. So that could be something cool for hammer mains to like have an incentive to actually go for tail cuts because some people actually like cutting the tail, but the hammer just doesn't have that ability because of its blunt damage. Moving on to the sword and shield. The sword and shield is actually in a very good position in terms of balance and kit. Its entire kit is very well balanced and has a lot of options for combos that it just simply has available. In my opinion, you can maybe give this thing an extra feature because my unprescribed ADHD makes me want to give each weapon an equal amount of features. And with the greatsword having like 3 to 4 features, while the sword and shield only gets focus strikes and power guards with the power clash mix, it can definitely go with maybe like a shield counter or an offset. I personally would lean toward the offset because even though it's a light weapon, the Insta-Glaive has an offset, so you can argue that the sword and shield can also have one. Aside from that, the longsword. The longsword, I've been told was improved for the most part well. It's been given good combo extensions while in red gauge, which was needed. However, there needs to be a balance adjustment for the Crimson/1 and the Spirit/1, because as far as I know, while in red gauge, people spam these two moves over and over because they are faster and probably stronger, and they'll need some sort of nerf or some sort of buff to the continuation of the combo so that people are not just spamming the two attacks. Aside from that, the longsword was given cancels to a couple of its moves such as Spirit Charge and Helmbreaker. And to me, this feels unfair because when it comes to this game, there's an emphasis on commitment and positioning. And when you're given these cancels, it gives a lot of leniency to the longsword. And even when you're doing some of your best attacks, you can kind of cancel out of it and not be punished for bad positioning. And I'm not a fan of that, especially when other weapons that I'll get to soon, such as the Hunting Horde, don't get this sort of treatment. So moving on from that, dual blades. As far as I know, dual blades are just as much as in a good position like the sword and shield. Um, where there are lots of combos and very well balanced, and for the most part, the perfect dodge that was given to the dual blades for wilds feels really good. I haven't played it myself, but I've heard nothing but good things about this weapon. It's a lot of fun for people, and it makes them feel like they're in the anime Attack on Titan. So aside from that, maybe give it an offset or some kind of counter, like maybe the long sword. I think that can add to its kit because I want all of the weapons to have some sort of equality when it comes to the features. Next is the hunting horn. The hunting horn has been given a lot of extra things, and it honestly makes it a lot of fun to use. Even I have started to use it, and I like it a lot. Um, my biggest personal issue with the hunting horn is the offset and the way it's done. Um, First off, the offset needs 4 notes to play to set up. And once you have those 4 notes done, you need one more input to confirm it so that you ready the hunter to offset. And that alone is already a lot compared to the greatsword and hammer, and it just makes no sense. But not only that, but let's say you go into the offset position and you're ready to counter a monster's attack. If something happens and the monster decides to use like an elemental attack or an AoE attack that you can't simply offset, and you decide to roll out of it, you can roll out of it. The problem is that you lose the offset note. So you have to again play the 4 notes and then get into the position again, which feels extremely unfair compared to the greatsword and hammer where their offsets are so easily done. And the longsword, like I mentioned before, are given cancels that from its strongest attacks when it is off position. So the hunting horn being punished in this way feels unfair. Um, and I think that if you're in a ready position to use the offset and you roll out of it, you should not lose the offset note. and it's absolutely ridiculous that you have to play the four notes again to do it. Aside from that, it is fun to play, but the offset really sucks. Not only that, but offsets are limited to a certain number of horns, and other hunting horns have different notes that replace it. So, yeah, very restrictive on the hunting horn. Moving on, the lance. The lance is a very simple weapon, and honestly, that makes it better. They've added good um, combos extensions and pretty much expanded on its kit, which makes it feel better. I haven't used it personally, but I've heard good things about it. And really, the only other thing it could really need is an offset because I just think the offsets are really cool, and this would make it more or less equal to the other weapons that have more features than weapons such as the lance or dual blades. It could be something simple as kind of ducking down, kind of when it does its blocking. But if you could charge the shield and then do sort of like an uppercut to do the offset, and if it connects, you can follow up with like a few uh, thrusting attacks or maybe the lance charge that it does. That'd be cool for a follow up. Moving on, the gun lance. I've heard that this received major improvements from Monster Hunter Worlds, and it feels a lot better. I haven't used the gun lance in Worlds, but I've heard so many good things that it feels far better now than it did before. And another good thing about it is that it has weapon options. For an example, I think it's Zoshia or Arkfeld that has a better build than its Ardian counterpart, which is really good because the Ardian meta just kind of is just better than most weapons. But the Gunlance is one of the few that has a better option than the Ardian, which is really nice. I like that a lot. I don't care for the Ardian weapons. They should be rebalanced, and I'll get to that later. Aside from that, the Gunlance can have an offset too, like something with its shelling or something, or somewhere else in its kit to have an offset. I think that'll be cool for it as well. Aside from that, the switch axe. The switch axe, a lot of people enjoy. However, there is an issue with spamming the its big powerful attack because as far as I know, the meta is use the full release slash, and if you're not using it, you're playing badly. That's sort of the given on this, and it's strange because I've always figured there was a lot of setup required to do the full release slash, and I didn't realize that you can very easily be spamming that move, and I didn't know that. So needs to be some kind of balance change to where it's not as easy to get to the full release slash because I don't think the one move entirely identifies the weapon. Like it's good as a big, powerful, flashy attack, but it shouldn't be the only move that you're using. The charged blade. The charged blade is a cool weapon, and I think it's popular for a reason. However, it is unbalanced in the sense that a lot of people are doing a savage axe meta, and I find this funny because the only thing I like about the charged blade is the SAED. And so I find it interesting that people are sort of leaning a lot into the Savage Axe. But if it is the strongest thing it has, I understand why people kind of lean to it. Um, it's probably because you have so much to set up for the SAED, and it takes too long to get to this point to use it, maybe. Aside from that, it's if there's a way to balance the SAED and the Savage Axe, it would be in a good place. And I think a good offset would be cool. It probably doesn't need it, but it also lacks in features much like other weapons, so I think that would be good for it. The Insect Glaive uh, got a lot of improvements and a lot of it got a very expanded kit, so a lot of combos and good options, and it expanded on the insect buffs so that more it leans to using them much more often and is far more helpful than previous iterations. Um, Aside from that, it already has an offset, but I think giving it something like a perfect dodge or even a counter when it has certain buffs ready, like the red buff or even all three. You can debate. Could be a necessary requirement to do something such as countering like the longsword or perfect dodging like the dual blades or an end bow. Speaking of um, the bow was also very dramatically improved. It has a lot of movement options, which is really good and makes it feel a lot of fun. I was told that maybe they should change the focus mode reticle circle. They did say that they wanted it bigger. They didn't specifically say why. However, I can only assume that if it's bigger, it'll hit more wounds. And if that is the case, I cannot agree with this opinion only because the game is already easy enough. And not only that, but I don't want the bow hitting every wound in the body at the same time. So, because it, if you're in a group of four, it feels bad that the bow can hit every wound at the same time. It should at best hit one and let the other wounds open for other people to get them because those wounds most more likely than not directly buff their weapon. So I don't want the bow taking all of the wounds. So um, if that is the reasoning behind it, if it's for a different reason, um, then maybe it can be considered. But if it's for the sake of making it easier, the game's already easy enough, and we don't need to make it easier. Um, Aside from that, it has a perfect dodge, which is really cool for stamina control. I do think it can benefit from some sort of extra feature, rather it being like a counter or an offset. Counter would make more sense for its fast-paced fighting style, but I think an offset would just simply be cool. How they do that, I don't know. It could be like a close range explosive, much similar to like the heavy bowgun, but I don't know. I'm not the one that gets to decide that. The bowguns. I'm going to be talking about the light and heavy bowguns. I have a clear bias towards these weapons because, in my opinion, these two weapons were mostly ignored. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but whoever decided to design the bowguns for Monster Hunter Wilds, in my opinion, it looks like they hate the weapons. Like, this was their excuse of a bowgun, um, and it seems like they made it this way with the intention of later removing the weapon from the game entirely. So if Capcom for some whatever reason sees this, I'm sorry, but whoever designed it hate the bowguns. Even if it's not true and they think they did a good job, this is clearly the worst bowguns iteration that has ever been in Monster Hunter because they feel bland. There's no good modding system right now. It doesn't give you the creativity to make your own gun, and all of the guns more or less feel the same, which is a bad thing. Of course, they've been buffed to where they all feel consistent and powerful. This is for both light and heavy bowgun. They're both very powerful and consistent, but they're very bland with without a proper modding system. Like it's so boring that it the modding system was given pretty much the Palico treatment because I say that because previous Monster Hunter iterations, the Palico system has been reduced to something smaller constantly. And although I've only played Monster Hunter World before Wilds, I there was at least option and player interaction required for the class system for the Palico, and before that there was even more things to consider. But in Wilds, there's no interaction with the Palico at all. At best, you can choose its armor and its weapon, and that's it. So it's really boring, and I don't understand why they would do this because the Palico has always felt so alive and necessary before. Just for them to make it make it this really powerful um kind of feels like more like a tool now because you don't really interact with the Palico anymore. And honestly, sometimes it feels like the Palico is hunting the monster and not you. Like if you weren't there, I am 100% certain that the Palico can 1v1 the monster. And in some games before, the older ones, you can actually play as the Palico and kill the monsters. So for whatever reason, they're buffing the Palico again in this game and giving it every possible tool from the get-go. Like, this is clearly too powerful, and I'm not sure who decided to do this in Capcom, but it needs some sort of class functionality system so that there's at least player interaction with the Palico. Not only that, but these tools should be hidden from the player so that somewhere in the world they'll have to find them. Because in World you have to find these Palico tribes, which was pretty cool, and you kind of did like personal quests for them to unlock these things. But in Wilds, there's none of that. It just has everything. It's the strongest thing in the game, and it feels bad because I want to play with the Palico, but it is clearly too strong. Anyways, I got really into a side tangent about the Palico. So, light bowguns. Yeah, back to the weapons. The light bowgun was received a lot of mobility while fighting, which is pretty cool in general, but there is a move called the burst step, which should be something that is optional and added to a modding system, because although it's cool, it's sometimes hard to do, so it should be something that only more experienced players should put into their weapon and should be a choice in some sort of modding system. Also, another issue with the light bowgun is that the chaser round, which is a unique move you can do after shooting, and the special ammo keybind are the same button. So sometimes you'll shoot and then want to do a chaser round, but you'll accidentally equip the special ammo, and sometimes when you want to do the special ammo, you'll accidentally do a chaser round. Kind of depends on the situation. It's all very situational, but it is weird that they have the same keybind, and maybe if they added some way to manually change this would be nice. Um, Aside from that, my biggest gripe with bowguns is their lack of modding and the freedom to control recoil and reload speed. So here I've prepared a sort of makeshift modding system. On the top right, I've added a new option for special ammos because there's adhesive mode, which acts as a kind of a sticky ammo that attaches to the monster, and the more you shoot at it, the more damage it'll do when the timer ends and explodes. Wyvern Blast is a mine that gets to blow up multiple times and do damage. The counter mine, however, will serve similarly to the Wyvern Blast, where you set it on the ground, but instead of blowing up multiple times for damage, it'll only blow up the one time, and if timed right to the monster, it'll counter, or in this case, offset the attack. And I think that would be a really cool addition because right now the light bowgun has no additional features besides the focus strike, and even then the focus strike is like a little grenade that it gets to shoot. So I think that'd be a cool option to give. Aside from that, I've given a few different options for the modding for a second part of the modding to give it like recoil control, reload speed, and such. On the right, there's level one modding, which could like do things like increase its normal ammo, piercing, or spread ammo. It could also you can add it to where it'll add elemental ammo. But this one point alone should add two or more bullets to the magazine because right now, if you choose the magazine mod, it'll add one extra bullet to the magazine, and that feels like a waste of a modding slot. But a lot of the bowguns are restricted on which ones they get to equip in the first place, as opposed to older versions. So just have it to where the simple ones, such as magazine and recoil, be placed on the right for just one. Like if you want more magazine, you can choose it. If you want more recoil control, you can select that. On the middle here, I've placed uh it's more of a playstyle upgrade. So standard mode upgrades damage for normal pierce and spread ammo. Ignition mod increases the ignition damage, which is, I believe, the special ammo, I think. But if you don't necessarily want more damage, but you want more in general, I've also put in the option for special ammo reserves, which would just give you more special ammo for those who like the rapid fire function. Um, so there's a basic upgrade for one of the three playstyles, whether it be with ammo or the special ammo or even the rapid fire functioning and having more reserves to use it for longer. And then the third one here I have on as a level 3 sort of gem modding. I just use these as symbols, but regardless, I put evade reload and perfect dodge reload. I think having these things would be interesting. Giving the light bowgun a perfect dodge would be a really nice way for skill expression, but for those who can't achieve it, you could also just dodge out of the way because it has a lot of mobility. And depending on which one you do, you can choose rather evade reload, where evading reloads your weapon, much like Monster Hunter Worlds, and or if you like being more up close and skill expressive to perfect dodge attacks, you can equip the perfect dodge reload, which would reload more ammo as a reward for skill expression. And then if you don't want either of those and want the burst step specifically, you can attach that. This way you can choose the burst step or maybe something else like reloading for the weapon itself. So this is definitely a much more mm, flexible modding system compared to what it has now. So I'm hoping that they consider something like this in the future. However, I have my doubts because they don't tend to rework these things to this extent. The heavy bowgun is also in a very similar position. It is powerful and consistent, but the biggest issue is lack of modding and build flexibility. Just like the light bowgun, there's a sort of a meta where you're forced to either use elemental ammo or make some kind of build around the special ammo. So, and for the heavy bowgun, that's pretty much going to be like the Wyvern Heart or Wyvern Piercer. And there are more options for the heavy bowgun, but there's no possible way to make a build for them just because they're like so much more weaker. Like, at least I'm not going to actually say any numbers. I don't know how to describe how much weaker they are. They're just the meta it has pushed them for elemental or special ammo such as the Wyvern Heart. So it feels very restrictive. Um, Not only that, but I don't like its focus strike and its offset. The offset is an optional tool, which is kind of nice, but at the same time, because of that, no one really uses it, and a lot of players didn't actually know the heavy bowgun had an offset. So if you're watching this video, I want to say you likely knew that already, but some of you will probably not know that, mainly because it's so underused. So what I've decided um, as an option is for the offset and um, I'm trying to think of it, focus strike. The offset and focus strike should be one and the same. So right now, what you have to do is you have to attach the special ammo. You'll have and to attach it, you'll need energy because the offset requires energy, and then you have to set it up to use it. While I want to remove the not the offset. I want to remove the requirement of the special ammo and the fact that you need to attach the special ammo to use the offset. I want to remove those two things, and I'll put here in a video what it looks like now and what I think it should be like so that you can just go straight to the offset. But the reason for this is the offset that it is now, mm, I'm saying that wrong. The offset that I want it to be should also be the focus strike. So you'll have incentive to use the offset when possible, but if you also want to, you could use it as a close range focus strike. This will give it more skill expression instead of the boring cannon shot it has for its focus strike because I don't like it. Um, Making these two things the same one move will might seem overpowered at first, but you're still going to be limited to the three because heavy bowguns can only do the focus strike 3 times. And if you spam it to specifically use the offset, you won't have any for focus strikes, and you'll have to wait for it to recharge on its own. So it's kind of a self-balancing act with this weapon. It's on a similar position with the light bowgun. I didn't mention it before, but the light bowgun also has a really boring focus strike, but I have no idea as of right now how to change that, or I have no recommendations at the very least on what should be done with it. But at least for the heavy bowgun, I want the focus strike and the offset to be one and the same, and I don't want it to take up any special ammo or even the requirement to even attach it because that doesn't feel right and it's so clunky and it's very tedious to set up as well. For special ammo, it's right now three different options, which is Wyvern Heart, Wyvern Piercer, and Wyvern Blast. Those three things are nice, but the Wyvern Blast is extremely underutilized because it does like less than half damage than all the others. By the all the others, I mean the other two. So I thought of something where the heavy bowgun can have a similar sort of predetermined special ammo like the light bowgun to where it'll have predetermined rapid fire ammo. So once you equip its special ammo, it'll be restricted to like one or two types of ammo to shoot rapidly. And for the heavy bowgun, it could also have these predetermined ones where it'll kind of like upgrade that ammo to a stronger version. For example, normal would go to Wyvern Heart, the Pierce ammo can go to Wyvern Piercer, and spread ammo could be the Wyvern Blast. Stick, and then you could do the same thing for the other ones, such as sticky ammo can be upgraded to something like the cluster bomb, and the flaming ammo could be upgraded to something like a flaming bomb. Um, but these are just a recommendation of how to rework it because um, the other MOs, such as Sticky, Cluster, and Elementals, um, are very limited, and I kind of want something to where it can refill the gauge and let you use those things more times in a fight. Because once you run out of Elemental ammo, you could either craft more, that's if you bring any, and if you don't have any more to craft, you'll have to specifically go back to the tent to get more. And honestly, going back to the tent to restock is kind of dumb, and I don't think anyone does it. Not only that, but the game also gives you a ton of materials, but at the same time, it doesn't give you enough sometimes to have enough elemental ammo to kill the monster, especially with the monsters getting more and more health these days. Because although they're getting more health, elemental damage isn't necessarily going up. So at some point, they're just going to have more health, and you're just never going to have enough elemental ammo to deal with the monster. And this also puts like a weird restriction on builds. So aside from that, I do have a separate idea on how to do a modding system or even the special ammo, because you can ignore what I said about the predetermined ammo for special ammos, and you can just leave it with the primary three. However, if it is left to just the heart, piercer, and blast, I do think there needs to be a rebalance for this. For example, Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Piercer can both crit, and because of this, they do far more damage than the Wyvern Blast that can't. Not only that, but the Wyvern Blast can't do KO damage, and it just does far less damage. Um, so in my opinion, the Wyvern Blast should have more raw damage than Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Piercer, while a full crit build, allowing them to crit, can make them do slightly more damage than Blast. But I believe that without crit, Wyvern Blast should do more damage than these two other special ammo types, while with full crit, these these two can surpass it in that way. But right now, Wyvern Blast is weaker than them without crit, and with crit, they're even stronger. So there definitely needs to be a rebalance specifically for that. And just to show, these three are together up here because of what I mentioned before about the offset and the focus strike being one and the same. Because before you had to choose between Wyvern Blast and the Wyvern Counter, but now with the focus strike and the offset being one and the same, you could put these three together, giving you more options. Because honestly, even if you chose Wyvern Blast and you chose Wyvern Heart, you're never using both in a fight. You're just using Wyvern Heart because it does so much more damage. So a rebalance in this is necessary. Aside from that, I've put up a very basic and similar modding system compared to Monster Hunter World. It's just set up in a level 1, 2, and 3 fashion like I did with the light bowgun. So you could choose a level 1 attachment, a level 2 attachment, and a level 3 attachment, where 1 and 2 are specifically to control the recoil or reload speed or even attach the shield. Uh, it could be a good way to give yourself flexibility and prioritize what you want. And with the levels, this is specifically an interaction that I thought of for the level of powder, because right now heavy bowguns and light bowguns have level 1, level 2, and level 3 powder, which improves the damage each level up. And I think this level of powder give while it gives you more damage, should come with more recoil, but right now it doesn't do that. Recoil is specifically placed on a weapon type, or not a weapon type, an ammo type of Capcom's choosing, and they've chosen the spread ammo and the um, explosive ammo types. Those specifically have recoil, not piercer or normal, even if you have level 3 powder, which doesn't make sense. Recoil and reload speed should specifically be increased the higher the level of powder. So having this level 1 and level 2 um, system can let you reduce the recoil or reload speed of your choice by either you could reduce the recoil by 2, giving it a level 1 recoil. If that makes sense, a level 3 powder will have a level 3 recoil, but if you choose a level 2 recoil, it'll reduce it down to a level 1. And the same with idea with the level 1s, it'll reduce the level by 1, making it more convenient in that sense. So if you want, you could reduce a weapon's recoil that has a powder level 3 by 2, and then you can reduce its reload speed by 1, making it more convenient to reload. Or if you prefer a more defensive tank, you could choose the shield, like a level 2 shield. This could also change it physically. For example, shields kind of have like one or two shields on the side. A level 1 shield attachment will give one shield on one side, and the level 2 shield attachment will give it both shields on each side while giving a bonus boost. A bonus boost? What am I saying? A defense boost when you attach the shield attachment. And it just makes sense. Or if you just want more range, you could choose that as well, depending on your playstyle. Um, However, something like the range could be considered more because right now, spread ammo has this small window when you are up close to the monster that if you are too close, it will not do damage. You'll do like 1, 2, 3 points of damage compared to like 200 damage. And that makes no sense. And I want that small gap within the spread ammo to be removed so that if you barrel stuff a monster, it'll do full damage without having to worry about you being too close. It doesn't make sense, it's unrealistic, and if Capcom wants realism, don't reduce damage for barrel stuffing a monster, especially with spread ammo. If you want to do it for the other ones to prevent it from being overpowered at closer ranges, that's fine. But spread ammo, being the closest one, shouldn't be penalized for being close to the monster. Aside from that, its level 3 ones, power barrel could specifically boost the damage as the special ammos. Or if you prefer more special ammo, you could choose the special ammo reserves. And I've kind of also chosen normal and special ammo powders if you want to level up the powder of the heavy bowgun, because it also has that option. So if you want level 3 powders on certain like elementals or normal ammo, this will increase them by one depending on the playstyle you want. So this, in my opinion, is very flexible and gives people the freedom of choice of where they want to go. So yeah. Oh man, I've talked about the weapons a lot, but there's still more to cover. So let's keep it going. Um, Elemental damage for the weapons is very dull and boring, and I don't understand the reasoning why they've done it the same way every time. Like every game for elemental damage has been pretty much exactly the same, and I'm surprised what they haven't done is for example, right now, if a weapon, for example here, the Rathalos Gleam Sword has 339 fire damage. However, this does not mean you do 390 fire damage to a monster, it actually means you do 39 fire damage. Why does it do this? I don't know. So it means that weapons that attack slowly will never do good elemental damage, while weapons that attack quickly can do it. Well, an easy fix for this would be, let's say, right now the fire damage you do after a swing would be 39. What if you just switched it with the damage type of the raw damage? Like raw damage is 1,296. What if instead of 1,296 raw damage, it was 1,296 fire damage, and down here would be 39 physical damage. Like all you have to do is switch the damage types to give players more build variety uh, to choose from. Because right now, no one is going to play a greatsword and make a fire build because of how little damage it does. And just so some people are aware that when you increase fire damage, like the the gems, the skills that increase fire damage will say it'll increase it by like 100, maybe 200, which would change this from 390 to let's say 590. But in reality, all that does is change it from 39 fire damage to 59 fire damage. So it doesn't make sense why they would go in this direction and prevent elemental damage being such a cool thing people can choose. I've kind of put like a way to make them all equal. And this is just an example because I'm going to change it in a way to where some weapons, even if they have the same element, elemental element. What in the world am I saying? Even if weapons have the same element, you can still rebalance them in a way to where they all feel different. For example, weapons that simply do more damage will have less sharpness and less affinity. Oh my goodness, less affinity, and weapons that do less damage will have more sharpness and more affinity because that's simply just how you would balance it. And aside from that, there are gem slots that come with certain weapons, but I feel like gem slots should automatically upgrade as you increase the rarity of a weapon, and they shouldn't necessarily differ from each other very much, just like the way it is now in Monster Hunter Wilds. So I like the way it is now. So yeah, moving on. I did make this one page just to kind of visually represent how the elemental damage should be balanced. For example, if it's 1,400 um, physical, it should be 100 elemental. So you either choose the left numbers or the right numbers on each one. So 1,400 attack is 100 elemental, or 1,400 elemental for 100 attack. And the more damage it does, on the right side, it'll show that it has less stats, while weapons that do more damage, or less damage, I mean, will have more stats for affinity and sharpness, which just kind of makes sense. This isn't like an obligation to Capcom. Like they don't have to balance it specifically this way, but it just this is just sort of the direction in which they need to think of to properly balance something. Because right now they have so many motion values and different like damage um, increments. I don't know, different damage numbers when you hit different types of the body. Each attack has a different motion value, and it's very difficult to keep track with all of it. And I'm honestly very impressed by people that can keep track of it because there's people who've made charts about this sort of thing. And Uh, at the end of this video, I'll kind of explain a few different things. So with elemental damage, I'm going to go now into Ardean weapons. Ardean weapons, from what I understand, are random parts you get for fighting high level monsters, and pretty much they'll always have more stats than weapons that you have killed monsters for. Um, However, not only do they have more stats, but they have three level 3 gem slots, which give them more gem skills than a weapon that has an innate skill with a level 3, a level 2, and a level 1 gem slot. Because mathematically speaking, with three level 3 gem slots, you can have up to four full level of skills, which you might think is in a similar situation as the weapons made out of monsters, but that's not the case. Mathematically speaking, with a level 2 and a level 1, those won't have multi-skilled gems. It'll just be that. So that's with the level 2 and level 1 that you can have one level 3 skill with that, and it'll have an innate skill that's also up to level 3, or a level 2 and a level 1 skill based on the weapon it is, because sometimes it'll change in that way. And then, since it only has one level 3 slot, it can get another level 3 skill with one extra level 1 skill. And that mathematically is three level 3 skills and one extra point skill. That's less than an Ardean weapon. So, at the very least, they can keep the stats being higher, but they should reduce the gems that they have, because Ardean weapons should not be the meta, but simply an option to choose from. So if you reduced the gems to where they are similar to that of the weapons that are made out of monsters can have better skills because they have an innate skill, while Ardean weapons will only have the level 3, 2, and 1 gem slots without having an innate skill. And the reason why they don't have an innate skill is because they're not made out of monsters. And I think that would just make so much sense lore wise, and it'll help balance the weapon. So please let me know what you think about that in the comments below. I'm really trying to put a lot of thought into all of this, and I've been talking a lot now already, and I'm just trying to be quick. So let's keep moving. Um, I want to talk about weapon designs for a quick minute here. Um, the weapon designs of the weapons are much better than they were in previous games, such as Monster Hunter World, and um, I'm okay with that. However, what I want specifically from an upgrading tree system is to make it look like I'm upgrading a weapon every time I level it up. Heavy bowguns actually do this very well, because right now I'm showing images of great swords and what it looks like from its lowest rarities to what it looks like on its highest rarity. And for great swords, they change visually very little. Like there's no difference between um, the rarity 8 to rarity 9 differences, but if you look at heavy bowguns, there are differences for rarity 8 and rarity 9 for heavy bowguns, and I'm wondering why not all the weapons were treated equally. Like, as much as I like the cooler designs for heavy bowguns if you level them up to the highest rarity, why were weapons like the greatsword or even the bow not treated the same? Because I'm showing the greatsword too, but honestly, the bow has it worse. Like, the greatsword's bad, the heavy bowgun's good, but the bow is like really, really bad. And when you upgrade a weapon, it should always, in my personal opinion, always change slightly in the direction you want the design. And you should always work backwards from the weapon design you want. For example, the heavy bowguns have this high tier difference for rarity 9, and then you can kind of remove from that as you go to lower rarities. So if you want something like this for the greatsword, you can slowly work your way backwards and reduce things and make it go back to its original form, so that it changes every once in a while and not just like that. If that makes sense. A lot of weapons in the greatsword and bow, once it looks like the way it is, it'll stay that way all the way to the end. which makes it not feel like you're upgrading it. And although you are technically upgrading the stats, it doesn't visually change to help you realize that change. So here's a bunch of weapon designs from Monster Hunter World, and specifically the top row is kind of the upgrade tree for the Rathalos weapons. There are copies of itself throughout because Monster Hunter World kind of made it a point to where you have to upgrade it through every rarity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to like 12, I think. I don't remember. And so there's a lot of doubles. For example, there's like 2 or 3 of the Buster Sword, another 2 for the Blooming Blade. But I took out the copies just to kind of show how often the Rathalos weapon changes as you upgrade it. And the Rathalos weapon is one of the few that actually do it right, while a lot of the other weapons on the bottom here I'm showing hardly change from the get-go, like from the beginning. For example, the Pukke weapon goes from Buster Sword 1 to the Blooming Blade 1, and then once it reaches to its master rank, um, rarity 12, it changes from this to that. Like on the bottom left here is the final DLC rarity 12 change, and that's it. Like it changes twice throughout the entire time, and that to me doesn't make sense. So I want to suggest something like this. So World did it right, and I like that. However, the majority of weapon designs were pretty bad, and that is what most people agree on. Wilds have better weapon designs, but have a lot less upgrading differences. Like there's a lot less you need to upgrade in Monster Hunter Wilds. While I want something to always show that it is upgrading, so I placed that in the bottom how I always want the upgrading tree to look like. So it'll go from the regular blade that we have, and it'll change into this into the Rathalos weapon and into the Guardian Rathalos. But right now in Wilds, Guardian Rathalos and Rathalos are two different trees. Like they don't interact with each other at all, and that doesn't make sense because I feel like it should go to the Hope Blade, into the Buster design, into the Rathalos, into the Guardian Rathalos, and that wouldn't make sense visually and mentally and probably lore wise as well, because you're gathering more and more monster parts to upgrade your weapon, and it should always show that visually. So, yeah, monster parts need to show that difference because it just makes sense for the realism of the game, and Capcom cares about realism. That's about all I wanted to talk about with the weapons, so let's move on to monsters. Uh, Monsters are in such a weird place because I can look past the fact that they are weak in the early game while being somewhat harder in the late game. I'm almost okay with the difficulty. There's this weird middle ground that I'm trying to get at. So, there was an interview with IGN that they asked about the health of the monsters, and Capcom did say that they increased the health of the monsters to try and better balance the wound system. However, um, even though they increased the health, most people, including new players, still killed the monsters extremely quickly. Like even if you were a good player or a bad player, killing the monsters was hardly a challenge. And for a game like Monster Hunter that has specifically made it difficult to kill monsters from the beginning of their, um, I don't know how to call it, legacy, the beginning iterations of Monster Hunter has always made fighting the monsters difficult, and it is it has been clear to a lot of people that every game that they've released, it has been getting easier and easier. However, what I don't understand is why. Was it the point to make Monster Hunter enjoyable to fight monsters and make you feel accomplished for fighting something difficult? Or is it just an anime video game where you're just supposed to be an OP character killing everything in its way? Like, the lore of the game is that you are hunters that are protecting and controlling the balance of nature. And right now, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like we are trampling on an environment that we are unfamiliar with, that we are just killing everything in our way to accomplish our goal, like some kind of um, uh, tyrannical military or something. I don't know. The way they've done it is so weird, and it just doesn't make sense because it's inconsistent with the way they've always done it before. And it was just as clear in World, but it's even more clear in Wilds. So, yeah, I want to show you guys a lot of the health bars from Monster Hunter World. They're not actually health bars, but they're the health values of said monsters. For example, the low rank health of a Great Jagras is 1,400. If you want, feel free to take a guess on how much health a low rank Chadacabra has. As of right now, it has about 4,000, roughly. Um, these values can more or less change randomly, just because that's how it's coded within the game. They'll have more or less health by a little bit. Uh, this as well as they'll have random like sizes. So um, feel free to take a second to look at this. Pause it if you have to. This is just how health looks like in Monster Hunter World. And here's a few extra ones from uh, as well as in the DLC and such. So um, take that as you will. So Monster Health in Monster Hunter Wilds kind of exponentially goes up quickly. Um, a low rank Chadakara having around the base health of 4,000 um, kind of makes sense. It's like, okay, we have the wound system, they're going to be doing more damage. Let's give the monsters more health. The problem is, I'm not sure they understand that compared to the Clutch Claw system, to when they added that to the DLC of Monster Hunter World, they increased the health of the monsters to counteract the damage that you're doing with the Clutch Claw. Because if you didn't, you would be killing the monsters far too quickly. Um, so they consider that when dealing with the health of Monster Hunter Wild. But the problem is the wound system is stronger than the Clutch Claw system, and so the amount of damage you do is far higher and far more frequent and consistent compared to the Clutch Claw system. So pretty much no matter how much health a monster had, you would burn through it quickly because of how often wounds became. And no amount of increasing the monster's health changed it just because of how frequent wounds are. And their idea was let's make stronger monsters like Tempered Gormagala resistant to wounds, which doesn't make sense because what happens now is you have a monster that has just as much health as it would with a regular wound system, but now it's no longer receiving wounds, so you can't like deal with the bonus amount of health that it has. So it's kind of like a steep increase in difficulty because not only did you give the monsters more health, but you almost got rid of the wound system that you guys spent time making. And the the answer to the wound system is not giving the monsters more health and reducing the number of wounds because that's contradicting the work you've done. What you need to do is change the way the wounds interact with the monster. Because what happens mostly why it's so strong is because it stuns the monster. Every time you break a wound, especially tempered wounds, the monster will either be stunned momentarily with a red wound, and if it's tempered, a blue wound will automatically knock them down. And this gives players so much free time to do extra damage, and that is the biggest reason why it's so much better than the Clutch Claw. Clutch Claws you did like two, maybe three times in a hunt, you got your damage window and that's it. While wounds, you're getting it over and over again so many times throughout a fight that it is clear that the CC, the stunning, the crowd control that you are applying onto the monster is obviously the issue, not the damage, but the stunning. Like the monster shouldn't constantly be flinching every wound I break. So if you reduced that to either removing it or happening only once every 3 or 4 times you break a wound, that would far better balance the difficulty of a monster because now they'll have more opportunities to attack and try and kill you. Because that's what these monsters are. They're large monsters that are living in an environment and trying to live. And when you are trying to kill them, they're trying to kill you because they don't want to die. But right now, it doesn't feel like that. So please stop giving them more health. Don't reduce the number of wounds, but change the way that the monsters flinch so they are far more flinch resistant and don't become so stunned while breaking wounds. That'll be the best probably change you can do. So this way, when you want to do a focus strike, you have to consider your positioning and how much time you need to do a focus strike. Because if you get hit while doing a focus strike, you'll be knocked out of it and you won't break the wound. It just makes sense. It's fair and it's skill expressive. So please consider that. I've also taken the liberty of looking at other monsters' health. So you guys seen a bunch of monster health here, which like Arkveld, Rathalos, Nuudra, and tempered monsters such as tempered Nuudra, tempered Gormagala. I've shown how much base health they have and how much health their health increases by based on the number of hunters. And I've also done that with like frenzy monsters such as Frenzy Kutku specifically, how much health it has on base and how much health it increases on um, like 2 to 4 hunters. Frenzied Monsters is in such a bad place right now that I'm honestly shocked that they added it to the game. Like, they put in Gormagala, so it makes sense that they want to add in Frenzy Monsters, but Frenzy Monsters is such a little obstacle to get past that I'm surprised they went with the way they did it. So, from what I understand, is that Frenzy Monsters' health is reduced by half because they are frenzy. So if their base health is like 4,400, 4,500, the actual amount of health they're supposed to have is roughly around 9 to maybe 10,000. And supposedly, the reasoning for this is because they are far more aggressive and far more powerful. However, I do not believe that this is the case because there is also a video of someone putting more time studying frenzy monsters and their differences, and I will also link that down in the description below. In the at the end of the video, I'll explain a lot of links down below. So there's a lot of things I need to explain. But for now, frenzied monsters are almost not different at all to their regular counterparts. And if you're going to reduce the amount of health down so much to where a Frenzy Cuckoo has about the same amount of health as a low rank Chotacabra, you're going to have to make that Cuckoo really, really strong. For example, you'll have to remove flinching entirely, prevent it from receiving any KO damage, um, make it do twice as much damage, make it twice as much faster, make it immune to traps, make it um, let's say immune to poison or something. I don't know, just make it far more resilient than what it is now because it when you fight a frenzy monster, the only thing people think of is, oh, it's a free kill because the monster already killed itself by killing half its health for free with no downside. So please fix it, make them 10 times harder. It doesn't make sense the way they are because people are literally speedrunning Frenzy Cuckoo in like 30 seconds. Like, look it up. You could find it on YouTube. There are people speedrunning this monster in less than a minute. It's absolutely insane. So, pack monsters, you'll already see it here on the side, but they have a very interesting health bar, and that each for every monster that is included in the pack, each one will have slightly less health, but they will never all have the same amount of health, which is funny to me. Um, what I don't get is monster quests, such as there are no quests in the game that makes you hunt 3 or more monsters, which doesn't make sense because everyone as of right now is killing a monster between 20 minutes or less. And the fastest would be like Frenzy Cuckoo in like 30 seconds. So you can easily add like three, four, five Frenzy Cuckoo in a quest, and that'll take people maybe 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes at most, I'm willing to bet. So, um, monster quests such as pack monsters should be far more common and should already be in the game because right now there are random monster quests for two random monsters, two of the same monster, two random monsters. Sometimes there'll be a frenzy monster in there, but you're still given like 50 minutes most of the time, and you're given a ton of rewards for fighting more than one monster. But I'm not 100% certain. But a lot of times, when there are multiple monsters in the quest, their health is reduced simply because there are more than one monster in the quest. Not because it's like more difficult, but just simply because there are more monsters in the quest, they have their total health reduced. And that doesn't make sense when we're already killing monsters in like 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have three monsters, such as the Hirabami pack, you're going to kill it. You're going to kill all three within 30 minutes. So that's still within the 50-minute time, and there's no reason to reduce their health anymore because it won't make that much of a difference. So, yeah, that's what I think about pack monsters and frenzied monsters. They need to utilize frenzied monsters properly, and they actually need to use pack monsters because as of right now, they're not using pack monsters at all, and they don't feel important at all to the game. I've thought about different ways of balancing the monsters, but as of right now, I'll show you simply how they're set up. There are Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 monsters that have a strength level from 3 to 5. So when you have a quest that is 6, 7, and 8 star, that is not signifying the strength of the monster, it is simply saying the difficulty of the quest. So an 8-star difficulty quest doesn't necessarily mean that the monster is stronger. Um, it simply means that the quest itself is harder. So it could be like a tempered tier 2 Rathlos and a tempered, um, let's say Guardian Rathlos, and that'll be a difficulty quest of a 6, 7, or 8, but not because it's like the strongest of the strongest monster, and a higher level quest doesn't make them stronger. So even if you had the same monsters with a quest level of 6, if you change the quest level to 7 or 8, that doesn't make the monsters stronger because it's not the quest level that defines whether a monster is difficult or not. Um, so I want to, as I'm already showing each tiered monster and kind of they're tempered. It just doesn't make sense because right now this is just each one that's higher than another of tier is just simply stronger than the other. I'm getting all over the place. I need to focus. Tier 2 monsters will always be stronger than Tier 1 monsters, and so on with Tier 3 monsters always being stronger than Tier 1 or Tier 2. And that doesn't always mean it should be the case. There is a way to rebalance monsters. For example, at the very least, I want to change the star strength, which is the 3, 4, and 5, to change it from one from 3, 4 to 5 to 1 through 5. My goodness, I am all over the place. So first off, it should be a star level of 1 through 5. Right now, 1 and 2 stars are restricted to like pack monsters like the little Doshigumas that follow the alpha, and that doesn't make sense. It should be completely different, and I'll show you here how I want to do it. Um, so we'll have, instead of a 3 to 5 star, we'll have a 1 through 5 star. And then for the sake of health, I'll describe it like this. A tier 1 monster with 1 to 3 stars will have somewhere about 15 to 20,000. And then a tier 1 monster of a 4 or 5 star will have health between 20 to 25. And then a tempered tier 1 will go all the way to 30 to 35,000 health, and a tempered tier 1 with 4 to 5 stars should have 35 to 40. The biggest reasoning for this is I've taken a lot of time to look at the monster health, and I've noticed that multiple monsters tend to have very similar amounts of health, and it's never enough for the hunter, for us players to feel like we're having a good fight. And I want the monsters to be more equal to each other. Although this chart shows that the higher tier monsters will always be stronger in the end, but it shows that tempered tier 1 monsters, if they're strong enough, can handle other monsters of tier 2 and 3s if they're strong enough. And I want to emphasize that because it should be possible. Um, it makes sense for a monster who's gone through battles and become tempered to be able to fight other monsters that are untempered because they simply are stronger and more experienced. But the game doesn't emphasize that, and it feels unrealistic to me. So I've done the same pattern where tier ones, 1 through 3, will have set health. Tier twos and tier threes all go through the same pattern, but they kind of mix together in the middle. And I used just these numbers are not like perfect. This is not how a monster probably should be balanced, but I want the balancing to go in this direction because it makes sense. Because the biggest thing I want out of this is that I want to go back and fight tempered monsters such as a tempered Chotacabra and feel like I'm fighting a monster that's trying to kill me. Because as of right now, once you reach endgame and you go back to fight the low rank monsters, low rank, my bad, high rank tempered monsters, they don't feel like they're challenging you at all. And right now, actually, I've taken the time to look at their health, but tempered monsters and non-tempered monsters have little to no difference in their health. I've noticed a lot of doubled monsters like Chotacabra and the Chemistries, like they'll be a non-tempered and tempered version together, and they'll have a very similar amount of health that I'll be showing throughout this video. So hopefully you'll kind of take a moment to look at it and see the difference between them. And in my head, a tempered monster should never have a similar amount of health to a non-tempered monster, especially if they're like the same monster. So a tempered Chotacabra should always have like twice as much health as a non-tempered Chotacabra, because the game as well as Capcom need to show that tempered monsters have gone through fights, have gone through battles, and have earned the experience to become tempered. And this should show with not only their health bar, but for um every like tier that how do I say this? Every column that it goes up from 1 to 3, 4 to 5, tier one, not that, tempered 1 through 3 and tempered 4 to 5, every time it goes up one of health, their tempo and damage should go up a little. So to the point to that a tempered 4 to 5 star Chotacabra should have a similar health to tier 3 monsters, but not only that, but it should have a similar tempo to where they're constantly attacking you, and they do just as much damage as tier 3 monsters. Like, they should be threatening you and trying to kill you. But as of right now, hunters don't necessarily feel that way, and I think it should be that way. Not only that, but I want to be able to go back and fight the early game monsters and have fun with them too, because you guys put a lot of time and effort to put them in the game just for no one to feel like there's any reason to fight them because they're not only too easy, but there's no reason to. As far as rewards go, there is a good way to handle the rewards because you have low rank materials, you have high rank materials, and you could even add the same materials but tempered just so that there's a reason to fight them. And let's say right now there's an issue where you receive too many monster materials and you craft the weapons and armor too quickly. Right now, what they're doing with Laggy and Seregios is they're making it harder to gather the materials. But another way to fix this is if you're fighting a high rank or even a tempered monster that I've have shown here with separate um, material lists, you could have it where the high rank or tempered give you also the lower rank ones. For example, if you fight a tempered monster, you'll receive randomly tempered materials, but you'll also receive randomly high rank materials, and you'll also receive randomly low rank materials, all within the same loot percentage box. So even if you receive like 20 rewards from fighting a Chadakabra, you'll randomly get low rank, high rank, and tempered materials um, randomly, and you'll have to fight it more often to try and get what you want. And it'll be harder, of course, to get what you want. But if people are saying that you receive the materials too quickly, this is a funny way to go about it. It's rather that or just lower the percentage of getting the monster materials because I think doing it the way I mentioned before the first time by adding all three into the loot pool um, kind of makes it easier to farm for certain materials because sometimes, let's say you're building a talisman and you need Chadacabra shell, and you might think, oh, a Chadacabra shell. Okay, I'll go fight a high rank um, Chadacabra, but sometimes people won't realize that the loots are different for each Chadacabra, and it feels tedious to have to go back and fight a specifically weaker monster to get a material to where it'll feel more convenient that I could fight maybe a high rank or tempered Chadacabra and have the same chance of getting that low rank material so that it is more convenient and it'll give me more of an incentive to fight a stronger monster so I don't have to go I say incentive, but the incentive is I get to enjoy a fight from a monster that's trying to kill me rather than fighting a low rank monster that is too easy to kill and feels more of an inconvenience. Because at the very least, I want to enjoy the fight to get the materials than to quickly go through a 1 to 2 minute fight of a monster and not have it fight back at all. So that's the idea behind it. So I hope that is considered. So now that I've talked about monster materials, I want to go ahead and talk about the armor now. So I do want to have an increased number of monster materials, and this could also extend to having armor needing more materials because honestly, you receive a whole lot of materials, but I think it's more than that. I'm pretty sure that armor in general requires less materials. So it's kind of a double dipping on leniency and making it easier on the players, where a lot of players, and especially veterans, probably don't see the need in it, although it could be understood because it's not like you want to spend a whole lot of time um grinding one monster over and over just to get one really rare material. Um I'm conflicted on that because although it doesn't make sense why you should fight one monster over and over again, I'm also on the side of you shouldn't need to fight one monster over and over again because if let's say you're missing one material and you have like 4 out of 5 armor pieces, you really don't need that last one and you could just fight that monster whenever and one other what am I saying? Whenever and whatever other time you feel like you want to. Like you don't have to force yourself to fight one monster. And so, just as a reference, in Monster Hunter World, there is the end game sort of area called the Guiding Lands. And this place is not too popular just because people referred it to as the Grinding Lands, because there is so many things you had to grind for, and the idea of that isn't fun. However, in terms of Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, I personally enjoyed the guiding lands more than anything else in the game. but not because of the grinding. I ignored that entirely. Like if there was an armor set I had to grind for, my answer was to not grind for it. I just simply didn't grind it. Like, oh, I'm missing two armor pieces out of five, and I have to grind this monster X amount of times to maybe have a chance of getting a rare item. I just simply didn't go for it. I'm like, oh, well, I'll just fight a different monster because the last thing I want is to ruin my own experience fighting one monster over and over again for an armor piece that's really not necessary. Like, I understand completionist. I do understand the need to gather everything. However, that does not mean you have to ruin your own experience by shooting yourself in the foot by fighting one monster 20 plus times. You could just fight something else 3 to 4 times, fight a different monster. Just keep fighting different monsters. This game's not meant to grind one monster. You just fight them all, fight whichever one you find the most fun, and then go back to other monsters if you're missing some things. Ah, but at the same time, there is a limit to how low of a rarity um, drop rate should be. So I do get both sides. Like I like that there are things I have to get from certain monsters. But at the same time, if something I consider too difficult to grind out for, I simply ignore it altogether, which is probably and most likely not the same mindset as most other people. So, regardless, um, with monster armor, armor sets are in a weird place because you'll get one armor set, it'll be for a specific rarity, and then the most you can do with that armor set is upgrade its defense somewhat, but its rarity will never go up. It'll never get any extra skills, and it definitely never get any more gem slots. And I feel like that's a huge waste of armor. Like, I know that there is layered armor and you can put on whatever you want, but I have a couple ideas in which to make armor feel more necessary to get because I had this I want to say unfortunate position to where when I played Monster Hunter Wilds, I upgraded my armor set maybe 3 times. I had the Hope armor, I then got Doshiguma armor, I got the Odagirin armor set, and then from there I went straight to Arkveld, and there's literally 20 plus armor sets that I completely ignored because at no point did any monster push me or make me feel that I needed to upgrade my armor. The only reason why I got Oda gear and armor in the first place was because I thought it was cool. Like, I didn't need to upgrade my armor because a monster was killing me. I got armor just because I thought it looked cool. And then once I got Oda gear and armor, I didn't have to get anything else. And I just started unlocking like Arkveld armor, started unlocking Gormagala armor. Like I started fighting these monsters, and at no point did I feel challenged and their damage wasn't even enough to like make me want to get better armor until like the only thing I find difficult in the game is a tempered monster with 5-star strength, which would be the 8-star quest difficulty ones. And that's the only time I feel like I'm being challenged, and that's just not how I want to play the game. Like if you have so many armor sets, you should have a reason to get each one and slowly build yourself up over time. So I had two ideas with this. Clearly, you can level up your low rank and the high rank armor, and you can get other sets in between. But the point is, as you level up your armor, you could get it from low rank to high rank, and that's leveling up the hope armor. From there, you could say that this is very similar to a weapon upgrade tree to where you could fight a different monster and upgrade the armor you do have with different monster parts. Kind of like how in the weapon weapon tree, upgrade tree, I'm not really sure what to call it. Um, it'll diverge to different paths, and then those paths will need different monster materials. You'll see it a couple times in the upgrade trees, so it doesn't happen too often. And so from there, you'll upgrade your hope into the gear and armor just because the only reason why I had this similarity is because they both have Divine Blessing, which is kind of a rarity within armor sets. And then from there, you can upgrade Oda Gear and Armor into the Mitsu armor set just because they have similar skills. They both have burst and a few differences. But the point is, as you upgrade it, it does give you more skills, it gives you more skill slots, and it gives you higher defense. And not only that, but it gives you a reason to go back and maybe fight other monsters so that you could upgrade that tree because you'll need the lower ones to properly upgrade it. You can't just skip 5 monsters and get the end game armor. To me, that was sort of a huge miss. Like it did feel like I had no incentive in upgrading my armor. I only did it because I thought it looked cool. So just with Oda-gear and armor personally was enough to beat endgame monsters, and at no point is Oda-gear and armor supposed to be the armor you're using to fight them. You're supposed to keep leveling up. You're supposed to use Oda-gear and armor to maybe fight the apex monsters, and then once you want to fight the tempered ones, you'll need those higher rarity armor sets, but the game didn't give me that incentive, so this is just an idea on how to do it with armor as well as what I've previously stated with balancing monsters. This, when I talk about these things, is definitely with the intention that I have already explained everything beforehand. So at no point do I want one thing implemented and like everything else ignored. This is with the intention of everything being considered and changed. Another idea, I wouldn't say it's another idea, but it's the same. It's another example. Let's say that. We can go with leather armor, low rank to high rank as you level it up. And then from that, it can go into the Chatacabra armor. From there, the Chatacabra armor can go into either Guardian Rathlos or Guardian Dojiguma. I tried to make these things thematically similar so that the skills weren't changing too abruptly. I had to just keep in mind that things could be thematically similar. For example, speed eating goes to Guardian Doshiguma only because it has hunger resistance, which is similar enough in my opinion, while weakness exploit can be emphasized over here with Guardian Rathalos. Similarly to the weapon upgrade skill upgrade tree. I keep saying skill tree, but that's just not it. And then the same idea with Guardian Doshiguma. It can commit to heroics and have a different skill set for that. Or it can commit to Constitution and have other things like more points on Adrenaline Rush and Evade Window. From there, the idea continues from um, the Zuwu and Rathalos armor, where they could be upgraded one more time to something better, like Adrenaline Rush and Heroics, or just the Zuwu armor in general can go into Gormagala just because it's very mobility heavy with the Evade Window and Constitution. And it's somewhat similar to the Yoshiguma armor with the Constitution. And then Rathalos could go into the Seregios just because they share a ton of skills and thematically it fits. So that's just the idea of having a upgrade tree similar to the weapons, but placed onto the armor. However, this can be seen as a bit tedious and probably unnecessary. I did make one more chart to kind of just show visually on paper how this would look. Aside from that, uh, another idea, instead of having a upgrade tree for armor sets, you can simply upgrade armor from where it is and increase the rarity individually. So if I wanted, let's say, Rathalos armor, I can be upgrading it from low rank to high rank, and as it levels up in rarity, it'll get more skills, it'll get more skill slots, and it'll get higher defense. And the game kind of already does this, but it doesn't It does this in large increments. So it'll have one for low rank, it'll only have one for high rank, and it'll give you one more in master rank. But I want there to be more versions of itself within the rarities. So I shouldn't just be given one rarity 3, one rarity 6, and then one rarity 12. Like, there's so much more in between. Like, I want to keep the Rathalos armor as long as possible. And I feel like this shouldn't be too hard to do because there are more than enough skills, armor skills, and weapon skills that could be used to make creative and variety armor sets. So instead of skipping all the way to master rank, I have a few examples here. For example, this bone armor, I've mixed it with Monster Hunter World just for the sake of imagery. Monster Hunter World does not at any point do this. It has the same setup for armor as it does in Wilds. This is simply just a visualization as an example. So right now, let's say this bone armor on the left is rarity 3, and then we could have this armor in the middle be rarity 5, and then onto the right would be rarity 6 or 7. And then let's say it was 6, and this next one would be 7, onto rarity 8, into rarity 9. Like, that's how I feel like you could keep the same armor and slightly change the way it looks to make it feel like you're upgrading it while giving it more defense, more skills, and more skill slots. And that's it. Like, that's the idea behind it. And visually speaking, you don't have to change it by a whole ton, just a little bit. And some of you might be thinking, well, this is them reusing a ton of assets. And I don't see how that's an issue because Monster Hunter has always been a game that reuses assets very similarly to FromSoft. For example, think to yourself right now, how many of you like the Gormagala armor? It's pretty cool, isn't it? It's one of the favorite armors of the game. And not only that, but it's very popular in terms of meta as well. Uh, the Gormagala armor set is exactly the same as every other iteration from previous games, from handheld Monster Hunter games to Monster Hunter Rise, and even now on Wilds. The Gormagala armor looks the same, just updated for the visualization of graphics. So I'm not really bothered by the reuse of assets, especially since even if it's reused, it can still look cool. Because you could even do it with things like leather armor or even metal or ore armor, you can call it. You could have the early metal armor into these higher ones, and the Wilds has a similar one to these as well, so it can very easily do this. Here's a few other examples of different armor sets that World has. And I like this one for Anjanath a lot because this is a really good way to show how an armor set can slightly change but feel like it's being upgraded. Um, so out of these two, of either having a weapon upgrade tree similarity with the armor, or having the second one where you could just upgrade an armor individually and have its rarity increased that way. Um, Out of the two, this second one that I'm explaining was favored more. So it would probably be better to have it somewhat like this, to where you can upgrade an individual armor set to get a higher rarity, and that would be really cool. That's about more or less what I wanted to talk about armor, armor materials, and upgrading them. And I do think there could be so much more variety when it comes to armor. And the biggest reason why I'm talking about upgrading an individual armors to higher rarities is right now, if you've gotten to the end game, everyone is using the same 4 or 5 armor sets, and that'll slowly change as more monsters come out. But even then, like, you'll never go back to using Apex monster armor sets when things like Gormagala armor, Arkvelda armor, and let's say Laggy and Sergio's armor are out. Like, you're not going to go back and use the others. and even armor sets like Mitsusune that came out later, but not a lot of people are using it because it's, well, a lower rarity. Like it's not as good as Arkfeld or Gormagala armor. And so there's so many armor sets that are simply ignored, and they could be easily expanded upon by simply upgrading it individually to make it a higher rarity. So that's the idea behind armor sets and an idea on how to fix it. Like, because right now it's easily incomplete and too many people use the same thing and doesn't provide variety and customization. This game's all about expression and environment and details, and there's so many things this game emphasizes more than others, and sometimes it just simply stops short when it comes to certain details like armor or weapons. So let me know what you think about that. So moving on to the maps. The maps are mostly good. I do think they are just slightly too big for my liking. Um, I did like the big tree in Monster Hunter World a lot more. And not to say that other maps in other games aren't good, I just simply haven't played them, so I'm not going to say Monster Hunter World map is the best. I just simply liked the big massive tree there because it made the world feel more fantastical, and while everything else in Monster Hunter Wilds feels more normal. Like everything feels normal, like nothing doesn't really feel out of place. It's rather that or it doesn't feel as cool or fantastic. Like, does that make sense? Like there's a desert, there's a forest, there's the oil well basin, which is probably the only thing that's like most interesting. And then you have the ice shard cliffs, which is probably the most boring. And then there's the ruins of Wyveria, which is semi-interesting, but doesn't feel any different than the ice shard cliffs. Like those two feel so similar that sometimes you forget that they're two different maps. Um, Aside from that, as big and uh, diverse, I want to say, the desert and the forest maps, they are too big for their own good. Like they're so, I want to say they're so wide that even if you put a bunch of monsters, like they used to be limited to three, even if you put in like five or six, it doesn't feel like they interact with each other that much because the map's just simply so big and long. While in Monster Hunter World, even though there was only ever three monsters in one map, and the map itself was really tall, the monsters were programmed in a way to kind of run into each other frequently. And this made a map that's, even though it's smaller, felt more alive just because you simply saw things more often. And in Wilds, let me know if you've had this issue is a lot of monsters are having turf wars and they are nowhere near you. Like, why is that happening? It doesn't make the map feel more alive. It just makes it feel wasted. Like, especially when it's two monsters that are not even involved in the quest. Like, why? Why are you doing this to me? If that makes any sense. I don't like that monsters are fighting each other when you're not even there. So please, please change that. Like, I know you can't make the map smaller, but I know you can add more monsters or change the AI to where they're not having turf wars away from you. Because there's no point in having like a cool, fantastic turf war when you can't see it. Like it's a waste of resources, it's a waste of like time. It doesn't make it feel cool. It doesn't make the map feel alive. It just feels like a waste. So please change it to where they can only have turf wars near you. Like you have to be able to see it. Like if it's happening within your visual direction. So if you want the maps to feel more alive, that just simply has to happen. Aside from that, I did mention before that there's no reason to explore the maps because there's no like Palico clans or reason to like do quests to collect the gear for your Palico. Your Palico doesn't really feel alive or It just kind of does its own thing. It sets up traps. It heals you constantly. It collects materials for you, and he feels more like a tool than ever before, as opposed to previous iterations where you had so many things to go upon. So, as far as the map, I want to talk about the map layout. I think um, I'm going to show here visually that I think what was supposed to be the best situation for the map is to start off with the desert. That's fine. And then you can travel to, I want to say, the left and north to the forest. That would be northwest. And then you can travel straight east into the oil well basin. But I want there to be a difference here. The difference being that the oil well basin should have been underground. Like it makes sense. It's mostly underground as well, but there's also a lot of tunnels that like make it confusing to traverse, and that's fine. I'm not bothered by how many tunnels there are, but the thing is the oil well basin looks like a centerpiece of tunnels that connect to every map. Um, And the reason why I want it underground is because what I want to put on top of the oil well basin on the surface floor is a mountain, the mountain peaks of Suja. Because to me, in my head, Suja feels like that's supposed to be our hub. And I'll get to why I think that in a minute. From there, the oil well basin, you'll continue through the tunnels and find the ice shard cliffs. From the ice shard cliffs, you'll continue the path northward, northwest-ish, maybe, and you'll find the ruins of Wyveria. And only once you reach the ruins of Wyveria is there a proper walkway up to Suja. With Wyveria being the only place high enough to have a proper walkway to Suja, while the mountains being too steep for anywhere else, it kind of sets itself nicely to do it this way. And so visually, it'll look something like this. You'll go from the desert to the forest, underground into the oil well basin, to the Ishar Cliffs, to Wyveria, and then continuing upwards through the path to Suja. That's kind of what you do anyways in the game, but the map wise is not this is not the layout. It's just how I think it's supposed to be. Like you can put it in this layout so that it could follow the story the same way, but the reason why I believe Suja is supposed to be in the center is because I believe Suja was supposed to be the hub. This way, that once you've started any kind of quest, it wouldn't fast travel you anywhere. You would just simply get on your sacred and then go to the map immediately by going in any of the cardinal directions. And you could like jump, parkour, and fly to the map because the reason why I say that is because Capcom put so much effort into making you have the ability to go from one map to another without a loading screen. So it makes no sense why they would make a gathering hub so disconnected because now they shot themselves in the foot and they put so much work into removing the loading screens just to put in a gathering hub that does nothing but add loading screens. Like you have a loading screen to go into the gathering hub, and then you have loading screens to go to whichever what quest there is there on after. And so the idea here is if Suja's in the center on top of the peaks, it has the ability to parkour and jump and fly to any of the other maps. And for the case of the oil well basin, because it's directly under the mountain that Suja stands on, there could be a second, or not a secondary, but like like a cave separated specifically for jumping down, kind of like a volcano path downward, but it'll just be a tunnel specifically to just jump down straight to the caverns underneath. This way, you'll just have like a long fall that'll act like the loading screen, like any other traversal of the map. Because if you wanted to go to the desert to the forest, you had this weird winding path, which was clearly the loading screen for to unload the desert and reload the forest. So, with that said, that's how I believe they wanted it to do it, but just didn't. Rather, they didn't know how or didn't have enough time. It feels like that's the way they wanted to do it because there's no point. And emphasizing so much that there's no loading screens just to not use it. Like, when was the last time you went from one map to another without simply fast traveling? Because it was just so much easier and faster. Like, I have yet to, from the story, except for the story, I have yet to even bother going from one map to another just by walking. And it's even worse when you want to do an environmental link, because if you do that, you can't go to any other map. It locks you out of it. And Link Party is just there for the sake of the campaign. And in my opinion, it feels like the environmental link and the Link Party were supposed to be one and the same. This way, you can have a host. This host will share its map to the other hunters that join, so you all have the same map. And you can, since you're in a Link Party, you can all play the story together without any issue. Not only that, but you can go from one map to another without issue. Um, how would you go about going from one map to another without causing huge loading issues? Is the answer to that is, if you've ever played Destiny 1 or Destiny 2, you'll know that you could be in a party of four, and once you've, let's say you decide to go onto a planet, you guys can choose planets and they'll have many areas to travel and explore. If one of you, even if it's just one or two of you, that got too far ahead of the other teammates, and these zones aren't even like distinguished by distance from one to another. It's once you've reached a certain point, just like if you were reaching from the desert to the forest and wilds, there's these little areas that you just cross and you'll reach a loading zone. But it doesn't give you a loading screen. It just unloads the area behind you and reloads the area ahead of you. And this doesn't unload the game for everyone else, it just unloads it for you individually, and it'll give you your own instance of the new area. So once other people crossed that line, uh, the other people, once they get through, will simply unload the area they were before and load into the same instance that you are in. Like, if you've played Destiny, you'll know that that's how Destiny did it, and it wasn't even like it was smooth. Like I didn't, of course they had their own server issues, but that's just most games nowadays. Um, but at no point was there ever really a huge issue when one person wanted to get ahead on their own to another area, because they'll have their own instance of the map, and once the others caught up, you'll all be together again in the same instance. It's not like things will be spawning differently or like there'll be multiple of one enemy. That wouldn't happen. That wasn't an issue. Especially not to me anyways. Like I played a lot of Destiny 1 by myself, and I've had other like players just roaming around the map, loading into the zone I was in, loading out of the zone, and going from one area to another, and it was just done so seamlessly. So Monster Hunter, or more specifically Capcom, can definitely learn a lot from that specific interaction and system. And I definitely feel like that's what they need to implement to make a world like this work. Because if they wanted to put so much emphasis on removing loading screens, then they should have committed to it for the entire game and not just the story. Of course, there are other people who are like traversing the maps from one to another by physically going there and not fast traveling. There are a few, but that is a huge like minority. Like there's so few people doing that because the game doesn't incentivize you to do it. And in all honesty, I'm surprised that there's fast traveling in general because of that. Like, why is there fast traveling when I can simply walk there? Like, if you didn't want loading screens from one area to another, force us to go there physically. As tedious as that may sound, if you're putting the effort to remove the loading screens, then let me play the game the way you want it to and not give us fast travels just to give us a loading screen regardless. Like, does that make sense? They put so much effort in putting something in just to shoot themselves in the foot and say, oh no, you can ignore that. So, from a side view, um, you'll have be in Suja, and from there you can jump in any cardinal direction, and there'll be a tunnel specifically going down to the oil well basin. And then if you wanted to go back up, you'll take a tunnel that the oil well basin will have a variety of tunnels to take you to anywhere else of the map. However, these tunnels will only be usable after you've completed the campaign. Like, as weird as that might sound, as weird as that might sound, this will require the railroading bit of the campaign so that you don't accidentally go into the oil well basin and then get ahead of the campaign by accidentally going into Riveria early when you're supposed to go into the Ice Shard Cliffs and so on and so forth. Like, there'll have to be some way to restrict certain tunnels until the time is right, and this could easily be done with like monster quests or like campaign sectors, like just like how there was the Banbaro in Monster Hunter World, there were certain areas simply cut off until you got to that quest because Banbaro destroyed the rubble that was in the way to open up that part of the map. So they could have easily done the same thing for this bit of what I'm explaining. Like the way each tunnel could be like blocked off and unusable until you finish like certain monster quests that open up the path. And these can easily just be placed as optional quests too. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. It's just an idea on how to make the environmental link, the party link work as one. So it'll be the group party link. So instead of having something two different links that don't work with each other and not make it so complicated for everyone. Um, I haven't really gone into the optimization of the game, but that's just something that has already gone and passed by. Like the game already came out, the game's already unoptimized. Of course, it should have came out optimized, but it is unoptimized, and they're trying their best to fix it. They fixed it for a good number of people, not for everyone, and they're working on it. So I'm not really going to go into that because there's nothing to do about it. And of course, this whole map thing I'm explaining is also there's no real way to change that either, but just something I wanted to talk about a little bit because it feels like this is how Monster Hunter Wilds was supposed to be from the get-go, but they just simply couldn't do it either due to time constraints or simply because they lacked the knowledge to do it and didn't know how to go about it. So with that said, that's about everything I wanted to talk about between armor, weapons, designs, balancing, and the opinions of every weapon there is. So, with all that said, thank you for listening. There are other people who know more things about me of the game and the franchise as a whole. For example, if you want to know more about the in-depth systems of like siege systems and previous iterations of Monster Hunter, feel free to check out channels like MeatMan and Zhun because they have personal experience of older iterations of Monster Hunter. I'll link them in the description. Um, MeatMan has a Discord of a lot of other people who love Monster Hunter, and I joined them not too long ago, and I'm really happy just to be in the Discord with them and being able to talk about the game. And I have them to thank for having so much information for me as possible. Um, aside from that, um, for number crunching, there's this guy named Damo. I'll link his YouTube down below as well. He is a number cruncher. He knows numbers well, and he has made charts for the bowguns, the light bowgun and the heavy bowgun. Like he knows the motion values of all that stuff, and it's absolutely crazy. I'll link his YouTube down below. I want to say special thanks to Cake, um, Cake of Pokke, Pokke of Cake. I can't quite remember the order of the name, but Cake is a really nice person. I've had the pleasure of talking with her and then asking about her opinion of the game as well. I'll link her YouTube down below. And if you go onto MeatMan's Discord, you'll find a lot of other people in the server talk about Monster Hunter, and they have their own channels as well. A couple I can think of right off the back of my head is YaboiDeep. He's a really chill dude, and I enjoy playing with him. There's Atraik. He does like I think he does guides more, and he plays the dual blades a lot. So I'll link that channel as well. There is more, without a doubt. There are more, but I can't remember all of them off the back of my head. But if you want to talk to other people who like playing Monster Hunter, feel free to join MeatMan's server and join us. We're just a bunch of chill dudes that like to play the game. And not only that, but they're very supportive too. Like they help you with things. If you want to make a channel with YouTube and Monster Hunter, they'll talk with you about it. If you want to just chill and chat with them, they're pretty chill dudes and I enjoy talking with them. If you want to maybe exercise, they have a little chat for self-improvement to better yourself physically. So yeah, I'm encouraging you to join his server, the Discord server, and also completely insisting that you check out their channels and subscribe to them. They're cool dudes and they make really good content. I like Zhun's content a lot because I like his voice. I don't know why. And if you've gotten to this point of the video, thank you so much. I am not built to talk for this long. I prefer shorter, gameplay focused content. So I might not do one of these again for a while. But if you did like this and you want other things like explored to possibly give suggestions and make better in the right direction that Monster Hunter should be, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section. Please tell me what you think. Tell me what your opinion is, if you agree or disagree. If you want to add to an opinion about a weapon, please tell me. I am open to all of your thoughts. This is very an open discussion, and I tried my best to give more than one answer to a lot of things. So feel free to give me your opinion on something that can be done for either a weapon, monster, or even armor, on how they could be changed in some way for the betterment of everyone, not just someone individually. Like I tried to make a modding system for heavy bowgun that benefits most people that want to specialize their weapon in some way. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. It'll mean a lot to me. I'm an extremely small channel, and I'll catch you guys all later.